Hello students, welcome to the English class. Let us understand the prose All the World Heard stage. This is an edited part of the story of a great stage player and a writer. Let us see what the lesson All the World Heard stage has to say. Before we move on to the lesson, let us have a small introduction to this chapter. Here is a small passage. You need to read the passage and answer the questions. You might have heard the name of this great person here. Medha Patkar is a well-known name all over India. She was born on 1st December 1954 in Mumbai. All her life has been devoted to social service, particularly for the upliftment of tribals. She started Narmada Bachao Andolan in 1985 to protest against the construction of the Narmada Dam across the river. Medha Patkar has won awards at the national level for her social work. These include Right to Livelihood Award, also called the Alternative Nobel Prize from Sweden in 1992, Goldman Environment Prize by USA in 1993, and Green Ribbon Award by BBC in 1995. If you are constantly in touch with the news, you might be knowing about this, the Narmada Bachao Andolan. She was the one who led this Andolan here. Medha Patkar, she is a well-known, it's a very famous name all over our country. Born on December 1st, 1954 in Mumbai, all her life she has been devoted towards the social work, and particularly she strived for the upliftment of the tribal people. And why was this Narmada Bachao Andolan started? In order to protect the construction of Narmada Dam across the river. And because of this social worker of hers, she has won a number of awards. Now, what exactly is Medha Patkar? She is primarily a social worker. And why did she start the Narmada Bachao Andolan? So, to protest against the dam construction across the river. And the two countries other than India that recognized her service are, one is Sweden, the other one is USA. Now, let us read on the text and learn about great people who have achieved. All the achievements are not just simply achieved, they have done hard work behind this. And that is how a person becomes great and recognized by all due to the hard work, determination, and their dedication towards their work. Let's know about some new words that you come across in this lesson. Plump is round and flat. Fables, short imaginary tales with usually animals as characters. Like we tell stories to small children. Imaginary tales, it's not exactly the story which is there. Such are called as fables. Senior wrangler, a person who tops in maths examination from Cambridge University. Replete with is full of. Mulancha Mera, a Marathi phrase meaning my favorite child or my dream child. Dragons, crocodile like big animals with wings you might have seen in the TV and all. Dragons. Flights of fancy, that is wings of imagination. When you give wings to your imagination, you create things in your mind. That is known as flights of fancy. It's a phrase. Reverend is respected. Froze is the past tense of freeze here, cold that turns water to ice. Here it is in this context related to this lesson, the meaning is got scared. Meekly is mildly. More new words. Dog-eared. Corners of pages are turned down. This is commonly found even here in your textbooks and notes. The edges of your textbooks and the notes will be folded. That's called as dog-eared. Jeered is mocked or laughed at. Crumpled, crushed. Glumly is gloomily or sadly. Sidelines, area just outside a sports field. Where lines are drawn, they are called as sidelines. Treasure is wealth. Hidden is covered. Cast a spell of magic. Told the story which attracted. Everyone. What does this phrase mean? Cast a spell of magic, saying the story which attracts everyone. Fascinated is attracted. Traditional, being part of the customs of a particular group of people that has not changed for a long time. Like when you attend functions, you go in a traditional wear. That means the wearing has been practiced from long years back, which is not changed and still you follow. In Kannada, we call it as Sampradayika. So that is traditional. Steed is riding horse. Students, you need to refer to page number 97, 98 and 99 for the lesson reading in the textbook. All the world her stage. What does it mean? Here, she is an actor, stage actress we can say. Let us see what does she mean through the lesson all the world her stage. Who is this person whom we are talking about? Here, this is a short life sketch of Sai Paranjpye, a famous theatre personality from Pune, Maharashtra. She has also directed many television serials. She won the National Award for the Best Documentary with a Social Purpose. Her films are relevant even today. So here is a small life story of Sai Paranjpye. She is a famous theatre personality from Pune, that is Maharashtra. Even many television serials have been directed by her, and she has won the Best National Award for her Best Documentary with a Social Purpose. Documentary is a short film which gives a message to the society with a social purpose, which gives a message regarding the evils of the society or any developments of the society. So that is called as a documentary. Her films are relevant even today. Even today, she is a popular person. It was a familiar sight to the residents of Pune, a plump little girl of about 6 or 7 skipping along with an elderly gentleman. They laughed, talked and had a great time. So, for the residents of Pune, people who were staying in Pune, it was a very common sight to be seen. What was it? A small girl who was a little plumpy, about 6 or 7 years old. She used to walk with an elderly gentleman, a little aged, skipping, running, like how the small children, when you hold their hands and walk on the road, they just skip off. It's not they plainly walk. So that's how this little girl used to walk with an elderly gentleman, laughed, talked, and they both used to have a great time on the road. The little girl was Sai, and the gentleman was a famous educationist and mathematician, Sir R.P. Paranjpye, India's first senior wrangler and Sai's grandfather. Appa. As they walked, Appa put small mathematical questions and also related fables to her. These included fairy tales, Arabian Nights, and Birbal stories. Sai naturally preferred the fairy tales to mathematical problems. So what is the name of that little girl of around 6 to 7 years old? Her name was Sai. And the gentleman, he was a famous educationist and a mathematician. Who was he? He was a famous educationist and even a mathematician named R.P. Paranjpye. That's India's first senior wrangler. So he was one of the person who had topped in maths examination from Cambridge University. And he was Sai's grandfather, called as Appa by Sai. As they walked, what he used to do is he used to put simple mathematical questions to Sai, and also he used to tell fables, stories, small stories, created stories about animals or birds or something like that. And these included, in his stories, he also used to tell about fairy tales, Arabian Nights if you have read these books, and even Birbal stories. And naturally, what would happen if you were given a choice between asking mathematics questions and saying stories? What would you prefer? Naturally, you would go get interested towards listening to stories, and the same was the condition with Sai too. She preferred the fairy tales to mathematical problems. Tell me a story, Appa, Sai said one day as they set out. No, said Appa grimly. Today you will tell me one. And she did. It was a fairy tale. replete with dragons and princes, talking parrots, and hidden gold. She completed her tale with, and they lived happily ever after. So one day, every day, whenever they went outside, now that day Sai told Appa to tell a story. But he said very firmly that that day he wouldn't tell a story. Instead, Sai had to tell a story to him. And she started with her story. It was a fairy tale. Fairy tales which consist of dragons and princes, talking parrots, and hidden gold. Like fairy tale speaks about the treasure which is hidden long back, and some king or a prince goes finding it. So such stories she had made of her own. And finally she completed her story. Tale is a story. Now, how did she complete? The last line ended saying that they lived happily ever after. So most of the fairy tales ends like that. The king and the queen lived happily after. Prince and the princess lived happily. So this is how she created a story of her own. Hmm, said Appa. Quite interesting. Where did you read it? I didn't. I made it up, cried Sai. So our grandfather was said, appreciating her that the story was interesting, and asked her where she had read that story from. But Sai gave a surprising answer, saying that she hadn't read it anywhere, she had created her own story. Her grandfather was very much impressed. That was perhaps her first flight of fancy, and it was the beginning of a wonderful world of creativity. By the time she was just 8, she had published her first book of fairy tales called Mulancha. So, listening to Sai saying that she had created her own story, grandfather was very much impressed. And that was a beginning where her first flight of fancy, where she started her creative imagination of stories, was a beginning. And there was a wonderful world of creativity in her. By the time she was just 8 years old, she had published her first book of fairy tales called Mulancha. And what does that mean? Mulancha means, it's a Marathi word, Marathi phrase meaning my favorite child or my dream child. And that was a book of fairy tales where she had written story of her own imagination. Let's read further and understand how Sai's interest grew towards reading and how she became a famous personality. Sai's love for books grew with her. Books were revered objects in the Paranjpye household. One day, Sai stepped on a book. By mistake, as she rushed into the library. So what happened? As she grew, her love towards book also grew. Reading books is became one of the favorite hobby of Sai, and it always gives knowledge. Reading books is a very good hobby, children. You can create it for yourselves too. Books were revered objects in the Paranjpye house. Not only Sai, the members of that Paranjpye house all were used to reading books. Revered objects means they were respected. The books were respected to a great extent in their house. One day, Sai stepped on a book. By mistake, she stamped a book as she rushed into the library. She was rushing into the library. By then, she had stamped a book. Stop right there, ordered her grandfather. Sai froze. Do you know what you just did? You kicked knowledge. That's what you did. Now ask forgiveness of the book. So there was a order by grandfather. Stop right there. All of a sudden the voice came away from grandfather and Sai froze. Her body became chilled and she was scared. And grandfather asked her, do you know what you just did? Stamping the book is like kicking the knowledge. So that's what you did now. So you need to ask forgiveness of the book. So that's how we also follow. Even we stamp a small paper, we just ask forgiveness, right? By touching that again. Sai bent meekly and did namaskar to the book. The same punishment was given when he discovered any dog-eared book. With this, Sai learned to respect feelings about the books early in life. So, when her grandfather scolded her to ask forgiveness of the book, she bent down meekly and did namaskar to the book. She just bowed to the book. The same punishment was given whenever it was discovered at the house. If any book was made the dog-eared. I told you when the pages of the ends of the book edges will be folded sometimes, not sometimes, most of the times in your textbooks, notes and all. That is called as dog-eared book because all the pages will be folded. If such books were found, every time she would be punished. It was the punishment given to them. So it's always you should learn that respecting books is very important. With this, she learned to respect the feelings about books early in her life. See, if you teach the small children that you need to keep your books neatly without folding pages, so that is how you learn when you grow up. And Sai had learned it at the very young age of this. In this, in paragraph 10, you will mark stop right there. And do you know what you just did for extracts? Now stop right there. Who said this? Grandfather says this. To whom was it said? It was said to Sai Paranjpye. Why was it said? Because she had stamped a book. Now, do you know what you just did? Who says this? Grandfather says this. To whom was it said? It was said to Sai. Why did he say this? When unknowingly Sai had stamped a book, grandfather asks her so that she could recognize her mistake. It was not fun for her always. She was a bit plump and her mates used to make fun of her. You can't run with us, Sai, jeered Chandu. You make our team weak, said Meera unkindly. Never can you keep yourself active. You are too fat, added Devyani. So how was her school days? It was not fun for her always. Because most of the times we make fun of others, looking at the appearance or whatever it is. So now here what happened, Sai was a bit plump. She was a little stout, fat. And her mates as friends, classmates who studied together, they used to make fun of her and they used to tease her by saying that you can't run with us, Sai. Chandu, a girl, she used to make fun saying that you can't run with us. You can't make you make our teams weak because if you take a personality, you take a person who plays, who doesn't play because of the healthy body or a stout because of the stout body, she couldn't run. So the friends used to make fun saying that their team would become weak if she enters into the team. Unkindly, they used to tell her. They were not even bothered of her feelings. And all the other friends, sometimes Devayani, a girl called Devayani, used to say, never can you keep yourself active. You are too fat. Just because you are stout, you are too active or you are inactive. Sai's face crumpled and she sat glumly by the sidelines, watching her friends laugh and play happily. Soon her face brightened. She cried out, ha! I know of a lovely game. It's a magic island full of hidden treasure. The mates who were playing gathered around her to listen to her story. In no time, she cast a spell of magic. They not only listened to the fantastic story, but were also ready to take roles and act as she directed. This went on not for a day or two, but for the whole week. Now, Sai's face crumpled. She was very sad because her friends used to make fun of her. And what did she do? She used to sit by the sidelines watching. Sidelines is the boundaries marked in the ground. She used to sit there watching her friends, how happily they were enjoying. Soon she cheered herself. Her face brightened up and she calls on to her friends saying that she know a lovely game. I know of a lovely game. And what was that lovely game? It was full of magic island, full of hidden treasure. Like it's a creative story. Then all the friends would run to her. In no time, she cast a spell of magic. The way she expressed a story, she used to speak about the story, what she wanted to say. They not only listened to the fantastic story, but were also ready to take roles and act as she directed. They just didn't want to listen to that, but also she used to give direction about that story, what she used to tell, and they used to act, friends used to act according to her direction. And this was not for 1 or 2 days, for the whole week they used to do the same thing. Now Sai was always fascinated by many things. One of them was doll's wedding. This is a traditional game played by Maharashtrian girls. Children conducted marriage of a bride doll and a groom doll. Mantras are chanted, God and poha are shared. Good. Yes, Sai was always fascinated by many things. She was attracted towards many things, and one of that was dolls wedding. If you have seen, small children will play with the dolls, and this is actually a very traditional game. Means long since years the children have been playing this game there in Maharashtra. It's a game played by played by Maharashtrian girls only. What did they do in this? The children used to conduct a marriage between a bride doll and a groom doll, means a male doll and a female doll, and they used to share with some food. What was that food? God, it's jaggery. It's a Marathi word, God, and poha is beaten rice. They are shared and they enjoy this play. As a child, she said one day, Mummy, you never let me have any fun, complainingly. Mother said, All right, you want a wedding? Well, you will have one that you can never forget. On that day, when she came back from school, the whole house looked like a marriage hall. Before she could say anything, she was dressed like a bride's mother. The band arrived, the groom rode on a real steed, all the children of the locality took part. The bride was brought with all religious chantings. So one day, like she had seen all the other children playing this doll's wedding, she said complainingly to her mother that she was never allowed to have any fun. So mother said, Yes, all right. So you also want to have a game, play a game of doll's wedding? Well, you will also have one which we'll never forget in your life. And that day when she came back from the school, the whole house looked like a wedding hall or a marriage hall. Mother had decorated everything, giving her a surprise. Before she could say anything, her mother took her and dressed her like a bride's mother, the wedding girl's mother. And the band arrived, the groom rode on a real steed. All the children of the locality took part. All the children had joined together, and the bride was brought with all religious chanting. So she also had the fun of playing that doll's wedding. The mother that day, so fond of a drama, grew up to become one of the India's leading filmmakers and theatre personalities. Long years back, that small child who enjoyed the doll's wedding, now today she was so fond of dramas, acts and plays, now grew up to become a famous one of the India's famous leading filmmakers. She is one of the leading directors and even the theatre personalities because she acted the roles on the stage. So that's how Sai Paranjpye is a famous theatre personality and even a director too.